Hey everyone, welcome to Tuesday Tea. I'm so excited to have you join us today. We took a bit of a hiatus on Tuesday Tea because I was launching some LinkedIn masterclasses, but I am thrilled to launch this month's episodes of Tuesday Tea, starting off with my friend Karen Miller. And I love Karen's story. I heard part of her story when we were talking about personal branding a couple months ago. Karen and her colleague joined me just to chat personal branding. I wanted to get a sense from them about what they felt branding was about. And as Karen shared her story, it was like, geez, she needs to share this widely. This is a story that all of us need to hear about stepping in and stepping up. And so Karen's going to talk to us about authenticity in personal branding today. So Karen's role is with as a meetings and convention specialist with Fredericton Tourism. And for those of you who don't know where Fredericton is, it is in Atlantic Canada. And I'm going to allow Karen to introduce herself a little bit more, a little bit about her destination, and then we're going to talk about her personal brand. Karen, it's so great to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Leanne. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. It's awesome.
Well, if you can, will you just share a little bit about your background, how you came into the role there at Fredericton Tourism?
Absolutely. I have been with the city of Fredericton now for over 15 years. My background has always been in customer service, not so much in-house hospitality, but in call center management. And I worked for a period of time at a not-for-profit association as a fundraising coordinator and event coordinator. So when I came to the city 15 years ago, it was a completely different shift. I came as a 911 operator, and I worked in an emergency dispatch center. So I worked with the city as a 911 operator for 5 years, and then had the opportunity to come to tourism. When I came to tourism, I was working in an administrative position, which evolved to administration and sales. So I worked a lot in the consumer market, and I did a lot of the advertising, sales, and working consumer shows and doing consumer marketing, working on publications and selling ads for printed materials. So that was my initial foray into the tourism world.
And so now that you've been now into your role for, how long have you been now there at Fredericton Tourism?
I've been at Fredericton Tourism for 15 years, just over 15, and I've been in my current position as meeting and convention specialist for 4 years now.
For 4 years. So that's how time flies by, because seems like it was just yesterday that you and I met, but it's been 4 years. Mm-hmm. Now, I would love for you to take us back to 4 years ago when you stepped into this role, because this is what I love about your story, and I'd love for you to share how your role came about and how you stepped into it.
I had the pleasure of working with the wonderful Wendy Bradley. Wendy worked in this position for many, many years. She really created this position, and the brand was largely about Wendy Bradley and Fredericton. As New Brunswick's capital city, she really, I think, did great strides in putting the city on the map when it came to meetings and conventions. Wendy had to take a bit of a hiatus from this position unexpectedly. So I approached our manager at the time and said, is there anything that I can do to help? Can I be trained as Wendy's backup? Is there anything I can do to support her? And he, my manager at the time, was very supportive and said, absolutely, let's put you in there, because it's a fantastic market, and I'm sure that Wendy would be glad to have a colleague working beside her. So that's how I ended up coming into it. It was as a support for Wendy. And as many people know, Wendy was not able to come back. She's now since retired. And so I'm in the position full-time. So it was never intended to become a full-time position, but due to circumstance, I was very fortunate that it did.
And I had the pleasure of working with Wendy as well, as many of our Canadian meetings and industry colleagues have. They know Wendy quite well. But I think most of us would say that you and Wendy have very different styles. What can you share with me about stepping into a role that was previously owned by someone who was quite different from yourself?
It was an experience, because when I first came in, as I mentioned, it was not intending to become so actively involved in this market. Wendy was still the face, and she was still the dynamic personality. And for those of you who know Wendy, and for those who don't, Wendy is a very bubbly, outgoing, very extroverted social person. So if there was anyone leading the charge to the dance floor, or anybody who was willing just to pick up and go, it's Wendy. And she is like that in every factor of her life. She's like that personally and professionally. So it was a bit of an adjustment when I came in, because I am not always like that. I tend to be a little more reserved, a lot more reserved. But our approach was still the same. We both love the city, and we both love working with people. And I think that commonality is what really ties us together. But coming in and following in the footsteps of such a vibrant and dynamic personality was a little bit overwhelming at first. That's true.
Now, do you recall conversations that you had back then about when you were introducing yourself to people? Do you remember how you introduced yourself to people who have never met you before?
Absolutely. And for the first several months, I would introduce myself as, you may know my colleague, Wendy Bradley from Fredericton, and people would often say, oh yeah, where is Wendy? And we would talk about Wendy. And it was the opportunity for me to, through association with Wendy, become familiar to people within the industry. And over time, it became less and less of that association. And certainly now when I talk to people, people are more familiar with me. And Wendy has really maintained a lot of those friendships and kept those contacts now still in her personal life. So it's nice now to not always have that association.
And so now you've made a name for yourself, and people know Karen from Fredericton. When they didn't know Karen from Fredericton, and it was very much about you being Wendy's replacement, how did that make you feel?
I never felt that I was Wendy's replacement, and I still don't, to be honest. There is no replacing Wendy. Wendy is such a force all on her own. But I am just the new face in Fredericton. And because our personalities are so different, it was a little bit daunting at first, that people would expect that I would have similar personality or behave a similar way. And that wasn't a direction that I could take myself. The only person I can be is me. And I recall having a conversation very early in this career with my friend and travel partner, Aaron Blanchard. I'm sure you know Aaron from the convention center. And I said I was struggling on who I was going to be in this market. And Aaron is very, very smart. And she said, Carrie, you can only be who you are. Like, you can't be Wendy because you're not Wendy. So be you. That's perfect. So that's the direction I went. I was like, okay, this is Karen. This is who I am.
You know, so we're talking about authenticity today, and authenticity can look, for 100 people, there's 100 different ways of being authentic. The irony is, as many ways as you can be authentic, you and I actually share a similar story, and that is being comfortable with being on the introverted side in a very extroverted industry. And Wendy embodied our industry, and we can name dozens of other industry professionals who embody that extroverted side, but you and I are actually on the opposite end of the spectrum, and we find ourselves in an industry that we're in the minority. Maybe we're not. After today, who knows? Maybe we'll have some more closet introverts come out, but we're in the minority, and we need to be, but we need to be authentic to that. I guess feeling. At what point, I suppose, in your career, and maybe this is even pre-Wendy, but at one point did you just say, you know what, I'm not going to change who I am. This is who I am, and the people that are attracted to me will be attracted to my authentic self.
And I think that conversation really happened for me in this position with that conversation with Aaron. It was a true pivotal moment for me that in many ways, because I have such respect for Aaron and for how well she's respected within the industry, for her to in many ways give me permission to be myself and that it was okay, was a huge moment for me. I am introverted in many ways, but once I'm comfortable and once I have a relationship with you, it's fast and furious. Like once we're friends, we're friends. And I think that that's what this relationship business is about. It's, you know, it's fun and it's comfortable and it's building those relationships, and you do that by being yourself. You can't be anybody but, because people will see right through you.
You know, I wish I had a conversation with Aaron, because I feel I'm almost 20 years late to that realization. It's really only been in the last 3 or 4 years for me, and given my tenure in the industry, like you, I've been in the industry a long time, but it's really been only in the 3 or 4 years where I've actually owned it, and I haven't been embarrassed by it. And I don't know why that was such a hurdle for me. Did you have a similar hurdle? Like, were you, because I was embarrassed. I really was embarrassed trying to pave my way in this extroverted industry. Did you feel that same way? And if you didn't, that is fine. I'll still own it. But I definitely went through that.
And I don't know if for me it was embarrassment, but it was definitely uncomfortable. And at times it still is. To force myself to walk up to a group of people who are very, very obviously friends and already have a relationship, and to feel comfortable enough to walk up and do that. So in many ways, that's where an introvert forces themselves to become extroverted, right? Because we need to push those boundaries. And I know that about myself. And so I'm consciously pushing myself in situations to make those connections, because I know that you know, it is something that I continue to work with.
Yeah, and you're right. It's something we actually need to do. I mean, we're in the business of meeting people, quite literally, so we know we need to do it ourselves. I heard it explained to me once, and for a long time, I identified myself as an omnivert, which meant I was introverted, but I could also be extroverted when called upon. And I carried that omnivert flag loud and proud for the longest time. But even that for me was inauthentic, because every time I forced myself to be an omnivert, I couldn't wait to get back to being an introvert. And it's not even a reverting back to being an introvert, but I couldn't wait to take that large group setting and find a few of those people and make a small group setting. And that became my zone, is that smaller group dynamic. Have you heard that term, omnivert? Is that something? I don't even know where I picked that up.
I don't know. It's a great word.
Yeah, it's like, but I imagine it's like the lizard. Like, I'm supposed to be a lizard, and I just change my colors depending on the environment I'm in. And I did that for the longest time. I changed my colors, and now I'm like, oh, it's too much work.
It's exhausting. And I think that's part of it, right? It's exhausting trying to be somebody you're not. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to disappear in a room full of people. And so, you know, being present and being an active participant in the moment is so important, so that you make those connections and reach out to people. And it's okay to do that over a series of different networks or different conferences. It doesn't all happen at once. Those relationships take time, right? So it's, yeah, it takes a while.
So being in an industry, and the irony, I get that we haven't been in these rooms for a year now, but these rooms will come back and we will end up at a rendezvous reception somewhere someday together. What strategies would you suggest for people who are like us and need to meet, but would rather meet in a different format? Do you have any strategies at all?
What I always try to keep in mind for myself is that everybody in that room was new to that room at some point. I'm very fortunate. I love my job. I love the people that I work with, and I love this industry. And everybody at some point was the newest person. But they are also the warmest group of people. Yesterday was International Women's Day. And it was a chance to celebrate the women in this industry. And it is really true. There are so many warm and supportive and encouraging people in this industry that even if you're not comfortable walking up to a group of people who are having a conversation, somebody will find you. Somebody will seek you out and see you hovering along the edges of the group and reach out to you and say hello. And then that person becomes your person. You see them again at the next day, in the morning, you know, keynote, or you'll sit with them at noon hour. And then all of a sudden you have a network and you're building your own. It happens naturally, but don't be afraid to walk up to a group. They are so warm and receptive. You can put that fear away because we've all been in that same position. And absolutely, if you're the first time in the room, or if you've been in that same room for 100 different meetings and you see me, come on up and say hi. I mean, we'll be friends, and then we'll sit together tomorrow. It's just that easy.
You know, I love what you said about our industry being so warm and friendly. And you're right. You're right. I think if I was in any other industry, I'd be a lot worse off because everyone is so warm and friendly. One of our warm and friendlies is sending you some love today. Sherry, hi, Sherry. Thanks for watching today. And Karen, she's sending you some love. So Sherry is great. There's someone I haven't connected with for a while. Now, we haven't connected with everybody for a while, but there's someone that I need to connect with more. So Karen, I would love for you to answer this question because the theme this week has really been about authenticity, especially when we're in these sales positions and we need to be authentic. What does it mean for you to be authentic in your personal brand?
For me, if you've ever done any kind of an insights training or any of those personality profiles, I always end up being almost entirely on the feeling side. I am all emotion. For me, being authentic means being allowed to be myself. I care about people. When I send you things in the mail or invite you to take part in something, it's because I genuinely want you to come. It's about reaching out to people if they've had a birthday, or reaching out to somebody if they've switched positions. It's all about that human element. It's about making the contact and building those relationships, just one small gesture at a time.
And that's exactly what Sherry said before you even said it. So you were her person at PCMA. You made Sherry feel so welcome. So anyways, thank you, Sherry, for sending that. Because I think what Sherry now has done is she's kind of given that stamp to approval to say, you know what, this is authentically Karen. And that's the Karen that we love. And so anyways, Sherry, thank you so much for saying that. Now, for listeners who have reservations about being authentic, and for a lot of industries, and I was one of these people, being authentic, it wasn't going to fly for me. I needed to change who I was for a long time. What advice would you have for a younger Leanne about being authentic?
I would say that there is no other Leanne. Like, the only face that you can put forward is who you truly are. And you are perfect, absolutely, the way that you are. And people are going to love who you are for who you are. It's not about trying to be somebody else. It's not about trying to fit into a mold, because people don't want a mold, right? People don't want to have a room full of people just like them. It's the diversity, it's the differences, it's the personalities that make you who you are and why you're so special. So yeah, absolutely, 100% you.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you said about Wendy, trying to be Wendy. So I have a Wendy in my life. Her name is Doris. And for those of you who know Doris Siemens, she's a powerful force. And we joined a company at the exact same time. So I didn't replace her. We were colleagues on the exact same journey, but at opposite ends of the spectrum. And there was no me being Doris. There was no way that I could be Doris. I'd be exhausted. I'd be dead. Like, I'd be in the gutter somewhere still trying to recover. Like, it just was not going to happen for me. But I wanted to be more like Doris, right? Everyone loves Doris. She's just magnetic, and she's just got this presence. But over time, I learned to embrace that I have a presence. It's just different. I will attract different kinds of people. The kinds of people that Doris attracts is awesome. But I will attract different kinds of people. Doris would overwhelm someone like you, Karen. And I don't know if you work with Doris, but you probably drink a lot after an interaction with her, because she's just so magnetic. But you and I, we could drink for hours and hours, and time would just fly by, and it would just be so natural and easy, just because we relate to each other's the way we relate just to the world in general. So anyways, I have a Wendy. I tried to be my Wendy and failed miserably. And so I'm happy. I'm very happy now just being Leanne. It's a lot easier. It's just a heck of a lot easier. Yeah. It's like trying to keep track of who it is I am. It's just easier keeping track of the real me and not the fake me.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
That's exhausting.
Well, Karen, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today and sharing your story. Like I said, I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially in an extroverted industry like ours, is the whole trying to keep up with the Joneses, and when stepping into a new market, what does that look like when replacing a predecessor? So I appreciate you sharing your story. And to your point, you're Karen from Fredericton. Everyone knows you as Karen from Fredericton, and that's because you stayed true to yourself and true to your authenticity. Do you have any parting words as we wrap up this call today?
I want to thank you for providing an opportunity for us to, and I speak on behalf of the Rendezvous Fredericton team too, because as you mentioned, we've reached out to you before as a group and said, okay, help us. To have you as a sounding board and as a resource for us is huge. And I think it's because of my personality and yours that we blend so well together, that it's so comfortable just to feel that support. And as I said yesterday, I commented on one of your posts that you're truly an inspiration. And you know what? And someday I want to be that for women starting in this industry. I want to be somebody people will feel comfortable to reach out to.
But Karen, you already are. And I think Sherry alluded to that already. So there is no beginning point or end point to being that person for one other person. So you already are that person. Yes, we didn't talk about it a lot, and maybe actually you can wrap up talking about a few things that are going on in Fredericton. I love, for anyone who's never been to Fredericton, you're putting it on your list right now. When travel opens up, you're going to visit Fredericton. It is one of my favorite places in the world. I've fallen in love with the destination. Karen, what's going on in Fredericton right now? Is there anything that you can share about what's happening, especially in this new normal?
It is, we have been very fortunate here in the current pandemic situations that we have still been able to gather in groups with all the health and safety precautions. So a lot of our activities turn to outdoor activities. So we are snowshoeing and we're sledding and we're taking part in outdoor activities, and there's an ice sculpture showcase. Fredericton is a beautiful green city, so for every opportunity that we have to get outdoors and enjoy it, we're definitely doing that. As far as the winter's been beautiful, so we've been snowshoeing and just staying active and celebrating winter in Fredericton.
Yeah, what I love, I think my favorite thing about Fredericton, and this is where I want to return, is it sounds weird to say, but your downtown core, which is a very small core, but that's what makes it incredible. I love just walking along there from the Delta all the way back to the convention center. It's one of my favorite memories. I'll never forget it for as long as I live, and I hope that I can relive it someday soon when we can travel. Thank you, Karen, so much. I'm so thrilled that you had time to share with us today, to share your insights on authenticity. Folks, if you're looking for tips on how to be authentic in your brand, go to leannecalderwood.com. The most recent blog post talks about 7 different ways that you can do that. And one of the ways is what Karen did today, and she's just telling her story. And that's one of the most powerful ways that you can show up more authentically, is to step out and share your story. You never know who you're going to help or inspire with your story. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Tuesday Tea. Thank you to Karen Miller with Fredericton Tourism, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.